HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Blood Highway, a novel, by Gina Wohlsdorf. Read by Amy Mcfadden. To be ignorant of what occurred before you were born is to remain always a child. Cicero. Somebody'd punched the mirror. The web of cracks reached high and wide, spiraling to a center indented from the impact, and brown-maroon with old blood. The splinters created 100 fractals. Funky parallelogram shapes gave back the room, each in its own dimensional miniature. It would have been beautiful, except all they had to reflect was 5 toilet stalls, 3 outdated hand dryers, dingy green tile, and me. I dumped the Rite Aid bag on the counter. The girl on the box was blonde. She was on a swing for no reason, her teeth these little white pearls, like she was trying to sell toothpaste instead of hair color. I tore her in half, poured the small glass bottle into the big plastic bottle, shook it up. The gloves were huge plastic hand moo-moos. The directions said to test it first, but I didn't waste the time. I squirted rose down my roots and smeared it in, noticing belatedly there was no clock in here. I pictured it. I couldn't not. The woman who threw the punch must have broken her hand. A hophead, or a schizophrenic, or a chick with a temper. She brought her fist way back, used her hips and legs like you're supposed to, and blammo! The shiver it must have sent up her arm. How her screaming must have reverberated in here, drowning out the tinny muzak I was humming along to. Manic Monday. The Bangles. But the Bangles were old enough that they'd begun the transition from ironic to nostalgic likability. An odd process, as I'd never stopped liking them. Eternal Flame? Come on! That dumb bubblegum was the perfect accompaniment to raining acid on my head, monkeying with what the hair gods gave me. I chunked my empties and boosted onto the counter, turning my back. Another mirror was on the opposite wall. I duplicated, shrinking with iterations, into homunculi. It was the primping mirror. No sinks. There was a shelf underneath to hold makeup. Did the men's room get one of these, or was this our trade-off for urinals? Why did traveling for 3 days exhaust me so much? It was like I'd run the miles instead of sitting in a seat watching the country pass. Plains turning into mountains, turning into desert, into other mountains, turning into Sacramento, whatever it looked like. It looked like Rite Aid, looked like a bathroom. My route got me here at 4:15 in the morning. It was a refueling stop and a change of drivers, so I had an hour to the last leg. I hadn't wanted to fall asleep in the lobby since bus people creeped me out, and I'd asked myself, what would a teenage runaway do with this hour? Answer? Dye her hair. When the time came to do it for real, I'd go red, or jet black. I'd be unrecognizable on my fire escape at sunset, strumming a guitar I bought at a pawn shop. If Audrey Hepburn could cold learn those few simple chords, so could I. And people would be walking down the boulevard, rushing, late for a meeting, and they'd hear a whispery rendition of a ballad that hadn't been cool in decades. Only they'd be alone, in their head. And that's the last private place. The last place you don't have to be cool. The place you can be you in all your nightmare glory. The place you can hear a happy song and think, for just a second, 5:30 to Los Angeles will board in 10 minutes. 10 minutes till boarding, 5:30 to Los Angeles. Thank you. I startled awake and fell off the counter. The wall where I'd been leaning, its stained green, had gone markedly paler in patches and streaks. The burning in my scalp was as hot as napalm. I dove for the taps, cranked them full blast, got my head under, and constructed incredible cuss word hyphenates, bodacious compound swears. It's fine. It's nothing. This is how bleach works. Rinse it out. Erase. The bathroom door blammed open. A stall slammed shut. A woman peed like a frightened racehorse. She flushed, and heavy clogs appeared by my sneaks. "It's leaving soon," she said. "Okay." I told the pecker taking tickets to wait for me, and he was his pecker self about it. "Okay, thanks." "I'm trying to help you, dear." I said thanks. My friend Allie wanted to be a hairstylist. She'd cautioned us about bleach. She said if you botched it, all your hair could fall out in clumps, and though that didn't seem to be happening, the texture was definitely different. I poured on the conditioner, and it helped. The strands went from straw to straw-soaked in conditioner. 5:30 to Los Angeles, now boarding. Now boarding, 5:30 to Los Angeles. Thank you. I shut off the water and wrung out handfuls. The rim of the sink was cool on my forehead. It was the fumes making my eyes water, the bright tang of fried hair. The bright white on my head in the mirror was incandescent. I thought of the magnesium we'd lit on fire 2 weeks ago in AP Chem. 5:30 to Los Angeles, final call. Final call, 5:30 to Los Angeles. Thank you. The lobby was empty. A diminutive man at the ticket pulpit was putting stubs to right angles with fussy hands. He didn't look up until I gave him my license. The contrast between my photo and my brand-new due meant he had to double-check. That was the last thing you wanted when using a fake ID. He pushed his round glasses higher on his nose, ripped my ticket, and added the stub to his pile. "Have a pleasant journey, Holly." The Greyhound idled under harsh lights. It gave off heat, a relief when the cold morning was biting my wet scalp. I climbed steep steps. Most of the seats were vacant, but I sat right behind the driver. It was people's least favorite spot, which made it my favorite spot. Out the window, bugs were frantic under street lamps. When we moved and there was nothing else to watch but black night cut by cruel electric, a median dry-dyed yellow, and across it the occasional northbound car driven by someone with a reason to be on the highway before dawn. "L.A., huh?" the driver said. His jowls rippled in the dark of the windshield. He tipped his Broncos cap at me. "Actress or model?" "Yeah, you got my number." "I see a lot of you girls on this route. Makes me worry." "Sorry." "Lots of sharks, and I don't mean in the water. They take advantage. You think you're different, but there's too many of you girls and too few gigs. It's lonely." I didn't mean to smile. "Sure, old fart like me, what's he know? You take care, sweetheart. Take care, and know when to call it a wash. Will you do that for me?" Other girls probably giggled, asked his name. I considered playing the part to find out how much of his concern was concern and how much was that brand of perviness unique to horrid old men. So self-awarely unfuckable that they crank their charm dials to 11 to see if this naif will chortle and coo. "You smoke?" he said. "No." "Thought I saw you smoking back at the station. Those things are poison, sweetheart." I picked at my cuticle and found a stray flap of skin. I tore it. A gutter of blood ran down my nail. "Okay," he said. "I got it. I'll leave you alone. Pardon me for caring." The sky faded through successive washes of blue. The ocean crept up, foaming over black boulders whose sharp points caught more and more sun. People boarded, disembarked. Civilization never seemed to end here. It thinned and thickened, but there were always buildings and bridges and streets. Nobody wanted to waste an inch, even as the colors changed, became jaundiced, and the plants turned anhydrous, except for the palm trees flashing coconuts when wind caught their wide fronds. I got off the bus as little as possible, afraid the driver would speed off without me if he got the chance. Meaning, the Marlboro Reds in my back pocket staled, and I ripped every minuscule excess of flesh that could be termed a hangnail, and my own blood made up my whole diet for the day. So that by 10 to 6 that evening, when we pulled into LA's downtown station and the bus doors sneezed open, it surprised even me how spry I was, jumping out of my seat and flying to the sidewalk. "Hey, don't forget your luggage!" The sun angled low, elongating every shadow. I put mine behind me, running west. Ahead was any street. It blatted with traffic. A trio of girls wearing tight neon nothing rollerbladed through the blocked crosswalk, catching their hands on hoods. A bistro was crowded with outdoor diners, expensive shades, capped teeth, the newest flip phones, the best blouses they could afford. I hit the button for a walk sign. Under Yugos and Rollses and Beamers and Bugs honking for the right-of-way, I heard an effortful picking apart of Hotel California. At the bus station's squat entrance sat the Caucasian version of Jesus. His guitar case lay in front of him, its blue lining pimpled in spare change. He grinned at me. "You the next big thing?" he said. I walked, though the sign still said don't. I caught another bus. This one was local. I could tell I was getting closer by what the shop sold. Korean food and dry cleaning to bikinis and surf accessories. Traffic got worse, amazingly. People became populous. I heard it and smelled it before I saw it. I hopped to the street, and the shriek and reek of humanity faded. I remembered being 13, turning this corner for the first time. The way everything changed. It was, no metaphor, where the sidewalk ended. Stepping from cement to tanned sugar, how crazed I was to get my shoes off. I did it leisurely now, and I walked into the soft scratch, the funny ground shift. It had made me laugh back then. I'd been laughing, and nobody cared or even looked for long, and I knew this was the place. Today was any day, and I could be anybody. The Pacific Ocean at sunset was a sight I could come marvel at any time I wanted. A few volleyball courts had games going. Numerous couples walked hand in hand, far enough inland to stay dry. A girl, who couldn't have been 2 yet, didn't want to leave her sandcastle. She batted her mother's hand with a plastic shovel. I perpendiculared all of this, went right up to where the tide licked, and sat down. I balled up my coat and put it behind my back with my shoes and set my toes in the salty fizz, my chin to the divot of my knees. The sun was still above the water. Sparse clouds chose a palette of magenta and slopped it everywhere. Waves overshot my feet. My butt got soaking wet. A parasailer way out there cut a wedge from the juicy orange sinking to the horizon line. The thing that still haunts me, and probably always will, is this. I could have stayed. It was my 4th dress rehearsal, and I'd aced it. Except for the hair, and from a certain perspective that was a win. Missing posters with my school photo would feature me dirty blonde. The sun skinnied down to a red rind as it slipped behind the edge of the world. The sea turned to blood. The stratosphere bulged with veins, draining its contents into the sea. I listened for silence, yet the sandcastle kid was still crying. A woman was telling her walking partner that she felt like he was using her for sex. A frenzied male was shouting, "Over! Over!" I took out my cigarettes, found a dry one, and corked it in my mouth. The seagulls wailed while I lit up. It was over. 4 days later, I got in a cab. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. The street lamps were on. A cold spring shower washed dirty slush into drains and brought night early, turning the last of rush hour into a bunch of gray dead ends. I'd considered taking the crosstown, but I was sick of buses. Plus, the St. Paul station wasn't in the best neighborhood. I regretted it when my driver tried a sucker route. I was just as sick of being a bitch to strangers. 35E, please, I said. This way is 35 to 5 to 62, or let me out. Most of the snow had melted. Parking lots had white borders, the last of the mountains that plows scooped to a side after blizzards. I thought it was nice our spring break actually looked like a spring break, albeit the Midwest's version. I was ready to go back, to hear about road trips to relatives in tired Wisconsin towns. I'd put together my own account of a week in Grand Forks, North Dakota, visiting my awesome Aunt Vi, who taught English Lit at UND and lived for live concerts. We went and saw James Taylor. I'd say I was the youngest person there by about 30 years. If there'd been a fire, I'd have so survived because everybody else would have been using walkers and canes to get to the emergency exits. I smelled great. My freshly albinoed head was even sexier after 96 hours without a wash. I was curious where I ranked on the driver's scale of foul passengers he'd ferried through the Twin Cities, but he didn't seem curious at all. He was turning up Bob Marley's Three Little Birds and whistling. Had he been curious, he might have asked what was making me so uneasy. After exiting at Cedar, the streets ran a standard grid. They were stocked with houses that could have been drawn as a dictionary diagram definition of normal. The Krenelka boys were hot-dogging at their b-ball hoop, exploiting the last, most fleeting gasp of daylight. Ms. Souther juggled groceries out of her trunk, while Max screamed in his car seat, scared his mother wouldn't come back for him. Good cars were socked away in garages for the night. Hail-pocked beaters sulked on the curb. Soggy leaves turned the yards into mulch piles, and lights in windows glowed warm caution, intimating meals inside. Lavish, home-cooked, served with a side of convivial chatter. My house was no different, except the blinds were closed. She did that so neighbors couldn't see in. During the day, the blinds were wide open so she could see out, preferably into neighbors' windows. "This one." He pulled in. I tried to see what he was seeing. Snow on the mountain under the front bays, lovingly tended, potted purple mums hanging from either side of the door, garish old lady earrings, paint and siding in good condition, clean gutters. I gave him all the cash I had left. "Keep it," and got out before his gasps could form cohesive thanks. The rain felt incredible. Clean, light, new. Our front door was purple, to match the mums. She loved color. She used to color-code my outfits, stirrup pants and matching sweaters, socks and underwear coordinated too. "Perfection is a secret," she'd said. The heavy knocker thwacked, announcing me. The evening news was cranked in front of an empty purple couch. Blue TV light darkened it navy. End tables held vases full of artificial irises. The gray carpet was thick and plush, lined from recent vacuuming. Easter decorations were gone, replaced with more general spring flourishes, pink and lavender ribbons on the lampshades, green plastic grass in a basket on the mantel. Around the living room's corner, sink spray shushed from the kitchen, and angular light, and the smell of baked ham. In between, the dining room strobed its darkness, the mirror on the antique hutch reflecting a news segment about flooding in Duluth. I took off my shoes as the sink shut off. A cupboard opened, a drawer. Her bowl met her spoon. She opened the freezer. It required that extra step, an audible fit and twist. It was the kind of noise you'd dismiss, if you even heard it, and you'd never put it together, with how she didn't allow you past the front door. The kitchen went dark. Her heels clopped a few steps. She appeared wearing her blue house dress, the nude pumps. She was eating as she walked. She got to the couch and turned on the lamp, sitting in its disk of light. She watched the news, and I watched her like a TV. She was brown-bobbed, rail-thin from mall walking, her nose a tad beaky. Its severity leaked to the rest of her face, sharpening it. She had perfect posture, but her bites of ice cream were greedy. White dribble progressed down the sides of her mouth. She didn't wipe it away. Why would she? She was alone. The anchors said goodnight, and their jingle played. Mom cut it off by aiming the remote. I heard the Friends theme's twangy opening. I got up, went toward her, sat beside her. All she did was set her bowl on a coaster, finally wiping her chin. I recognized this one. It was where Ross and Rachel first kissed. I didn't get the appeal of these two. I saw no cliffhang about them. Mom laughed at a weak punchline from Monica. Monica was her favorite. She told me a long time ago, and she'd asked who my favorite was. I'd said, "But they're not real, Mommy." I thought, one more time. I'd thought one more time so many times. "Mom?" Her eyes were silver, stuck to the screen. "Mom? Look at me. 'Kay?" The knocker thwacked. It made me jump. Mom stood and smoothed her skirt, shoes leaving crags behind her as she went to the door. Her face changed. Vibrancy infested it. She was so happy to see whoever it was. "Hi there," she said. Her thick Minnesota patois took every vowel and turned it babyish. "You come on in out of the rain now. My goodness, what the heck are you doing with shorts on, you silly goose?" "Thanks, Mrs. Cain. It was warm when the sun was out." Kyle Krenelka had his official Star Tribune billing pad. He tore off a slip and handed it to her. "Same as last week." "Well, okie dokie then. I've got some oatmeal raisin for you. How's that? How's that for a tip from the crazy lady down the street?" Mom didn't give him a chance to answer. She flipped on the hall light and opened the closet, getting her purse. Her heels clunked into the kitchen, writing the check, getting the cookies. It took that extra few seconds again, but Kyle was busy noticing me. "Hey, Rainey." "Hey," I said. "Is your hair different?" "Yeah, needed a change." "Is it, like—" Kyle was trying to think of a euphemism. He gave up pretty fast. "White?" "Needed a big change." "Wow." It was not a positive wow, but old crushes die hard. "I like it. It's awesome." "Here we go now," Mom said. "There's 3 cookies in there, so you give your brothers 1 each." "Okay, thanks." Kyle's spitty smile said those fuckers were as good as digested. "Bye." The bye was to me. I waved. "You put on some long pants next time," Mom said, following him as far as the threshold. "And a coat and a hat, mister." Her wagging finger and maternal sternness held until she stepped back inside and shut the door. Her lips drooped. Her brows wrote a pitiless V on her forehead. She turned the lock and looked through the peephole, transitioned to the living room windows, and cracked a blind. Her nose twitched. She smelled something. "Mom," I said. I went to her. While she watched to make sure Kyle left her property, I touched her blush-pink cheek. She spun, grabbed her bowl. I ducked as she threw it, and a line of milk melt cooled my hot throat. The dish's crash into the wall was enormous, completely obscuring the sound of the studio audience as Rachel got the door unlocked and Ross mashed his lips into hers. Mom flinched in every direction. Pale, stooped, battle-ready and breathing hard. I stayed on the floor, not moving. She looked around the room. Up, like her tormentor might be floating above her head. Down, where I was. Then behind her. Nothing. "You wait," she said. "You just wait. You'll find out soon. It'll happen soon, and then you'll be sorry." She went and collected her broken bowl, smaller pieces clicking into a large crescent that remained intact. She left and came back with a rag and rug shampoo. The theme song played again. They danced around the fountain, struck poses on the couch. The clock on the mantel said 7:30. She came for her remote. I drew my knees way up so she wouldn't trip. Her skirt skimmed the air in front of me, the lavender craze of her dryer sheets almost making me sneeze. She shut off the TV and the lamp, but when she got to the hall, she turned the light on, and she'd leave it on, for no better reason, I'm guessing, than fear of the dark. I moved a few slats of vertical blinds and set my temple to the chilled glass. The rain was picking up. Its sounds mixed well with her bathwater running. The rush and gush and swish became a tide. I sang, very quietly, about rainbow's ends and huckleberry friends, fuck ever those are, and thought how the joke was on her. Everything had already happened. I'd found out more than I'd ever need to know. But Mom was right. I'd learn what it really meant to be sorry 7 months and change later, on December 6th, 2001. Any Thursday. Part 1. Rainy. 1. I'm not a morning person, especially in winter, when dawn isn't dawn, but is instead an extension of night. I watched my clock radio and waited for it to blast an oldie at 6:30 sharp. I had 8 minutes. The red numbers made my room seem bank vault black and a tiny bit evil. I wrapped tight in my blankets. I read somewhere that adolescents' brains need more sleep than adults because ours are in the final, crucial stages of development. Yet homeroom started at 7:45, so figure that one out. My alarm clicked. I slapped it before it played 3 notes. I still recognized the song, Turn, 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 by the Byrds. It was my test for whether the day would be a good or bad one. Do I slap the button fast, and do I know the tune anyway? Yes to both meant I'd score breakfast without a problem, ace every assignment at school, and find an effective method to stay out of my house tonight until after she was already in bed. Meaning I was oddly ebullient, putting on whatever clothes I grabbed, leaving my room, locking up, heading downstairs. I only paused a second when I saw her at the dinette, wearing a short robe that showed too much leg. Her hair still undone, no makeup, skin blank and stale. Mesmerized by the early Today show's carnival of colors splashing our dark walls. It was the single second I always spared, to confirm her mere presence, her adherence to routine. Is she ballerina upright at the dining room table, pecking at buttered toast, a cup of black coffee turning with the fidgets of her knobby knuckles? Is she watching the morning news at too high a volume? Is she pretending you don't exist? Yes? Okay, proceed. The sidewalks were iceless. The sky was going from ink to navy blue ink. My optimism was holding, was growing, because I could feel a warm day waiting to happen. The cold had a humid quality, teasing my arm hairs, promising forgiveness for my lack of a coat. Winter coats suck in high school. It takes up half your locker space, or you walk around like Mr. Stay Puffed, or you forget it somewhere. I had an alternative heating system, and I employed it now. It's the best inhale, always, that first drag of the day. It tastes like a long, empty road. I noticed the cop car as I exhaled. My reaction was instant instinct. I put my arm down straight, cig clamped ash out against my thigh. I played my throat cloud like cold air steam, which it partially was. A citation for underage smoking would take a nice, juicy diarrhea all over my morning. I'd never been caught, but I'd also never seen a cop car plunked in a direct eyeline to my house. I flicked cinders, nervous. Somebody sat in the driver's seat. Streetlight hid his badge. His sleeve rose, and a McDonald's cup disappeared into his dense shadow. I figured he was getting his AM caffeine, bound to set a speed trap nearby. He didn't get out of the car. I turned the corner. Smoked cocky. Starbucks at 6:45 on a weekday. Suits of varying quality, lurkers on laptops at little tables, housewives in the good chairs sipping their extra foam. There were 2 other S-Buckses on my way to school, as well as a Caribou and a Dunn Brothers, plus 2 non-corporate, locally owned coffee houses. I never went to those. Their profit margin was narrow enough that it couldn't handle too many of...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?